Welcome to Spearfall. Here we talk about everything D&D. No, not that D&D, the good D&D. Loving House of the Dragon now. Makes me want to become a digital hermit and write the most complicated fantasy world I can. Anyway, gnomes. Not gnomes or genomes. Gnomes. You know when you first started playing D&D and you found those little people that you met during Gnome Guard for Dragon of Ice by a Peak with little mushroom squashers? Thinking about that really takes me back to first playing D&D.
Whatever you say, boomer.
Good old times. The people who play gnomes are usually the type to be tinkering and crafting away at some weird project until 3 AM just for the hell of it, and they don't give a single fuck. They usually also get excited about pretty much anything, kind of like a puppy or a 9-year-old. Before we dive into the problem that the gnome haters have with this race, let's first investigate the gnome itself. Being a steadfast, chaotic neutral, gnomes live for invention, laughter, and living their best life. They are creators who take pleasure in every aspect and detail of life. This is reflected in their clothing, which are respectfully dripping in swag. Embroidery and jewels are commonly used to decorate their modest items. I just have this amazing image of the most dripped out gnome walking through the street. He's just iridescent with jewels.
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Giving zero fucks and handing out treasure to anyone who compliments or asks about his clothing.
Give me compliments.
I understand the hate this race gets. Yes, they are small and could be annoying, but they are how everyone should live their life. Maybe the edgelord who plays rogue at your table with a parentless background story wouldn't agree, but anyone who isn't a withered husk devoid of the enjoyment of life's simple pleasures can, I think, appreciate the acquired taste of the gnome. But seriously, what's not to like? Well, I'll tell you what's not to like. To begin with, the major complaint that is circling around, and a major one unrelated to D&D, is that it's not Tolkien-esque. Halflings already took the space for a smaller character that isn't a dwarf or a hobbit, so gnomes share a fantasy race space with the halfling. Another common complaint is that they always end up being joke characters. Oh no. Joke characters are a tricky one. It comes down to the preference of your DM and the party. But I really like joke characters. Like, not too jokey, but a little bit of well-timed and well-placed comedy can really enhance a D&D experience in my eyes. But it's really like seasoning a steak. Do too much and it becomes annoying and can overpower everything else. Do too little and it becomes bland and you might as well not have even bothered.
Bored. What? Bored.
I think I'm preferring joking characters rather than joke characters. I 100% understand where this is coming from. Someone without a sense of comedic timing or touch playing a joking character can easily annoy the party and become a joke character, which everyone hates. Making a character that everyone hates couldn't be me at all. Fuck. Combining the lack of comedic sensitivity and the bubbly nature of a gnome can really grind people's gears. But this doesn't mean your character needs to be one-dimensional. Yes, a joke character can be an aspect of this, but I always envision gnomes as being fiercely loyal to their friends, while also being fiercely loyal to their ideas and just as dedicated to their lofty ideas. Another problem is the voice of gnomes. Everyone feels the need to make them the most high-pitched, annoying voice, which, yeah, they are small and it makes sense for them to have a high-pitched voice, but after 23 sessions of 4 hours at a time, this can get extremely grating. Maybe including more nasally gnome as a character could be better, less squeaky and definitely less high-pitched. Can't someone just give me some edgy goddamn gnomes? And also, if we could just zoom out for a moment from our gnome prejudice and we can envision gnomes in a new light, hopefully avoiding some of the problems like a super squeaky voice and being an annoying jokey character. Some examples of some excellent gnome class combinations and ideas I found are a swashbuckling pirate gnome called the Sea Badger who jumps around like Yoda. Awesome. But honestly, if you just try and forget what people think gnomes are and kind of think of you in your own light and take inspiration from different like pop culture references like Star Wars for example, you can really make this race shine. We really need people to think of gnomes in a different light, both creating characters and also DMing for them or having someone in your party. Whilst I was researching a little bit of public opinion around the gnome, I found this, and the too long didn't read version is that the DM killed their gnome wizard because he didn't like gnomes. What the fuck? Gnomes are cool, dude. Look at Gelbin Mechatalk from WoW. Look at him. Look how much ambition and determination this man has. A genius inventor, loves his people, and will happily lay down his life for his people. Gnomes are a noble race, and they want to take back their homeland through invention, laughter, and graft. These gnome detractors would rather take out someone's gnome just because a player dared to push the boundaries of D&D and play a gnome. God forbid we have a gnome at the D&D table. Rant aside, we need to now look deeper into the gnome and look at some of those subclasses. Now these subclasses, I hate to say it, are really boring and dry, which all vanilla D&D content in some way I guess can be a bit boring if you compare it to the homebrew versions, because I'll tell you, there are some crazy homebrew gnome races out there. You guys really went wild on that. But the forest gnome to begin with is just really basic. Your dexterity score increases by 1. You know the minor illusion cantrip, and your intelligence is your spellcasting modifier for it. I guess this is trying to play into the little playful gnome setting, and also you can speak with small beasts, so through sounds and gestures you can communicate simple ideas with small or smaller beasts. So let's see if it gets any better, and it doesn't get much better. Rock gnome, you get a +1 into your constitution score. Artificer's law, which basically makes you more intelligent when it comes to history checks. And then you have something which is really interesting. You have tinker, which for a small price and some time investment, you get to create 3 different magical kind of devices. You get a clockwork toy where you can make a little creature and it'll go around in a 5-foot direction and do something. And now this sounds really cool. Like, it might blow up, it might do something, it might cause the actual animal to appear and like manifest from it magically, it might do any number of things. But what does it do? It makes the noise of the animal that you created. So if you made a little dragon, it'll do a little dragon roar. And if you made an elephant, it would make a little elephant roar. Roar, moan. What do elephants do? They definitely don't moan, I'll tell you that much. Oh god, cut. But yeah, this isn't really great at all. They could have gone for something cool here, but they didn't, and it's a nice flavor of life thing. It's a nice little spice of life. It will like add some bit of flavor to your character, but it's nothing that's gonna make your character stand out. It's not meaty. Then you have another thing called fire starter, which is where you can produce a miniature little flame, and which you can use to light a candle, torch, or campfire. And using this device requires your action. So you have a flint and steel from Minecraft. On the one time using it takes an action. This is awful. What were people thinking when they made this? Well, and then you have the musical box. And when opened, your music box will play a single song at a moderate volume. And this box then stops playing when it reaches the song's end or when it closes. I guess if your DM's really lenient, you could make some like really cool thing and say, oh, it's like a song from my childhood. You could like do some like cool like RP stuff, I guess, with that. If your DM was really generous and you could explain it well and justify it, you could do cool things here. And then at the end, as a little tidbit, just to basically give some gnome players some hopium, is that you can have any other device that you want as long as you can justify it to your DM with how it's created, and you can limit the effects of said device to something similar as listed. So yeah, this is pretty bland. Sadly, gnomes really don't get anything too interesting, and the sub-races don't add much flavour. It potentially adds some interesting and imaginative RP moments, but you probably have to stretch them out in order to reach them. So now I'm gonna flick my dirty, shit-covered coin into the ring and throw my 2 cents to what should happen with a gnome, and what extra sub-races could be added to make the gnome a little bit more interesting. To begin with, we have the high gnome, and now high gnomes are very similar to high elves and are generally more reclusive, tending to be alone with themselves, a bit more wise, and a bit more intellectual, and see themselves as a lot more superior to their normal gnome cousins. Their sprightly nature has somewhat been downtrodden after centuries of abuse. It doesn't mean they're unwelcoming to outsiders, they're just more wary of them. They have become a bit more insular in nature, moving away from their wondrous inventions and focusing more on the arcane and mystical, which they tend to blend into arcane gadgets rather than focusing purely on mechanical contraptions. The high gnome tends to focus more on time, and they do have specific properties linking to the race that allows them to bend time itself. Only for a short period of time though. So the basically cliff notes of this is they have a mastery over magic, they are more disciplined and serious, they are elitist in nature, and they tend to take a large disliking to anyone not of their kind. Very similar to how high elves act. So for the gnome, I would suggest it would be an ability score increase. They would have an increase to 1 in intelligence to reflect their magical capabilities. All high gnomes should also have a choice of a cantrip from the wizard spell list, obviously using intelligence to cast this. And then to add a bit of favour, throw something in out of left field, they should have an ability called time trip. Now this takes 1 action, it can only be used in combat and once per long rest, but you can replay time. This causes the last 2 actions which your character made to repeat themselves again. This is portrayed as a projection of yourself, shimmering and ethereal, acting at twice the normal speed the events happen. Due to the mastery of high gnomes, time being very infantile and very like beginner level, any spells and any damage that is given out is immediately halved. I think this ability is quite cool, and if played very well and thought about quite a lot, can be very, very effective and very, very strong. But again, if you don't really plan for this and you just kind of wing it out, it can probably end up doing nothing at all, or maybe even harming your party. So you'll be very, very specific and track the time that you spent within combat and think about it very, very precisely, which I think lends itself to what a high gnome would be, someone who is very thoughtful, intelligent, see themselves as superior and can act out and plan accordingly. This just gives the gnome a little bit more power and a little bit more creativity for players to really mess around with and make something cool. And yes, I did just rip this from Chromie from World of Warcraft, so sue me, I guess. I would also say that high gnomes tend to live in desert kind of areas, desert biomes, just mainly because this would lead to their insular nature, and I think the whole time aspect and like the sands of time kind of fits together thematically, and your DM can probably make a really cool backstory for this. Now, the next race is essentially Mecha Gnomes, and I couldn't really give them the name Mecha Gnomes because that'd be a bit too much close, so I called them Tin Can Gnomes. I couldn't think of a better name for mechanical gnomes, but after tinkering a little bit too far and exploring a little bit too much, a subset of gnomes unleashed a curse upon their enclave, causing all gnomes in the area to live twice as long, but replacing 50% of their entire bodies with mechanical parts. The 50% mechanical section is purely random, and some gnomes have a straight split down one half, where the ear, leg, arm and all bits on one half of the body are mechanical, and others have just various bits are all different mechanical, so maybe like an ear on the right side, and now on the left side, an arm on one side, blah blah blah, and they're a bit more of a mismatch of different parts. Some gnomes have fully embraced a mechanical curse, hailing it as a wondrous next step in the progress of their kind. This appreciation borders on the cultish to outsiders, leading to gnomes wanting to achieve 100% mechanical integration with their mechanical side. The footnotes here is that basically they have a desire to roboticize anything which has flesh. They are also intense salvagers and will rummage around any parts of scraps just to find a new little gizmo or gadget, and also they have interchangeable limbs and prosthetics. So what comes along with wanting to play a Tin Can Gnome? So you have a constitution score increased by 1, reflecting their mechanical stature. You also know the mending cantrip at your first level, which makes sense because you're a gnome and you can just repair stuff naturally. You also have superior dark vision, a radius of 120 feet. I did steal this from Deep Gnome. This can be justified due to the mechanical eyes that you might have. And then finally, they have the ability Mechanical Vulture. So any corpse of mechanical creature or construct, no matter how complex, can be surveyed and salvaged. Down to your own DM's discretion, you can borrow an item from the parts of the creature and fuse it onto your own being, on your own wireframe, granting you brief but a less powerful version of what those parts granted the other creature. So therefore, if you find a creature with like a sword blade arm, you can then salvage this arm and attach it to yourself, but say it only works at half the power and grants only a 1d4 extra bit of damage on a melee hit, for example. If you can justify this power and its effects with your DM's approval, then it'll remain fused to you after 2 long rests, then it'll fall apart and not work anymore. Again, this leaves a lot of discretion on the DM's part, but if you have a good DM, you can probably organise something which is quite cool here and will give a lot of flavour to your character and make for some hilarious RP moments. So there is my 2 cents on what you need to do to upgrade the gnome to be a better race. But again, anything that you guys think of can be better than the base D&D, so just talk to your DM, come up with something cool, make gnomes a little bit more interesting than they are in base D&D, and hopefully we can stop gnome hate and spread gnome love instead. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.